Hey, good evening, everyone. John Henry Soto here. Welcome to JHS Interviews. And tonight I have performing artist and entrepreneur Amy Kingston Anderson. She is an amazing human being, very, very good friend of mine. And I'm very excited to talk to her about all that's going on in the art world, her world, our world, your world. So let's bring her on, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Amy Kingston Anderson.
Hi.
Yay!
Hi, Johnny.
How are you?
I'm very, very well. How are you
Good.
doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. You look fantastic as always, of course.
It was kind of exciting to actually put my face on for this because, like mask life is a little bit different.
Right.
And my love of lipstick has been like very upset recently. So I'm like in
Yeah.
the bathroom, I'm like, what color shall I wear? Yes. So exciting.
It is crazy. The lipstick industry must have really tanked, but
Oh boy. Yeah.
it will be back and better than ever.
You know it.
So obviously, the last few months have been interesting for everybody. How have you been?
You know, um, it's been I think weird is a really good word
Very good.
for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Yeah. Not cool.
Not
Weird.
cool. Weird,
Right.
unusual. Um, as you and I were saying the other day, like I feel like I can see all the aliens circling above with their popcorn, just looking down and like, wow, wow, this is the time.
Yeah.
Wowzer. So yeah, I mean it's I personally I'm healthy, I'm all right. Working a lot, so that's cool. But it has been such a shift in life and how we're doing everything and approaching everything and what's important and what just isn't frigging important anymore. It's really fascinating to do that, right? So
Right.
at first you're like, this thing is so important and I can never let it go. And then you're like, never mind.
Yeah.
Really? Next. Okay. Fine. You know? Yeah.
But one thing that I have noticed is like with artists in particular, during this time and during just any really time of adversity, they just tend to really rise to the occasion and start creating in different ways and different, just in different whatever they can figure out with whatever they have. And it reminds me of a Picasso quote, and I'm just paraphrasing, but he basically said, if you take away my paints, if you take away my crayons or my chalk, I'll use my paints. If you take away my paints, I'll use this. If you take away everything, I'll spit on my finger. He said I will spit and I will actually draw on the wall. And I thought, wow, that means in any whatever happens, he's just going to continue doing his art, and that's pretty much. So have you found like a interesting kind of direction to kind of think about? I could sit here. Let me see. What am I gonna do?
Yes, my saliva has been very useful and I've been I'm joking. Yeah. Well, yes. So in a couple of different ways. So I'm in a really cool band called Kingston and Greystar.
Mhm.
It's myself and my co-front woman, Greystar. Obviously, band live. That's the first thing you think of, live gigs. And so all our live gigs went away. So we are luckily are constantly saying, well, what if we do this? Well, shall we try this? And how about doing this? And how about doing that? So that went on overdrive.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, what can we do instead? Or what were the things that we had on the back burner that we were saying, well, let's not do that yet, or let's do that next year. Can we escalate these things and do those things instead? Because I really think it's the role and responsibility of artists to it's not just entertainment, because I think the word entertainment gets a bad rap sometimes. You think, oh, it's just entertainment. Like you saw a lot of the polls where the entertainers were like non-essential, and
Right.
like there's everyone else and then there's like the clowns. So I don't agree with that at all, even though I know I am a clown in real life. But I don't agree with that. It's the artists and the entertainers that are reminding people to imagine, and imagination is the basis and the seed of anything that you do in life and anything that is made or created or put into the future. So that bit went on overdrive, and we're like, okay, so what can we do and what can we imagine and what can we do instead? So instead of working on our stage shows and working on the super cool live shows we had planned, wow, we escalated. We had some recorded songs done, and we said, okay, screw it, let's do an EP instead. Fuck it, okay, what do we need? Okay, cover, okay, this, master, quick, get it all mixed. So that's what we're working on instead as one of the things.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, so yeah.
And your band is like so awesomely rock
outrageous.
It is like, it's not what people would think, right? Because right, because I'm sure there are people out there that are thinking like, oh, that's why she's probably singing, like maybe she's like Sarah McLachlan or Nora Jones. I'm like, no, it's more like heart and like like
yeah,
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. You know, I love Sarah McLachlan and Nora Jones, and that's definitely one side of me. But like for me, the heart and soul of rock and roll is energy and lightning and David Bowie and glittery stuff. And for me, that's when I listen to rock and roll. That's what like explodes in my very being. So I'm like, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and it's going to be outrageous, and there's going to be unicorns and neon everywhere, and yeah, so that's the deal. Yeah,
I love it. Cool. I want to just acknowledge a few people that actually have come on here. Ethan Dangberg is at the John Soto Show. Cool, thank you. And Simon is saying hello, Amy. And
hi, Simon.
Me, how you doing, Simon? Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. So let's go back a little bit, to Amy. Where were you born? You were born in Brooklyn, right? Is that right?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. No.
Where exactly? What part of Brooklyn? Because I don't.
Yes, the United Kingdom of Brooklyn. No, I was born and raised in England.
Cool.
In a couple of different places. I was born in Norfolk, which is so you've got England, right? You've got or the United Kingdom. You have the fluffy top, like the thistle head is Scotland, and then it's slimmer. You've got the north, and then the left bum cheek is Wales, and the right bum cheek is, because England's a lovely curvy lady, the right side is East Anglia. So I was born in Norfolk in East Anglia.
Okay, that's a really good explanation of that, actually.
I always think it works.
Yeah,
so it's from Norfolk.
So was music really, really early on in something important to you, and dance?
I recently found a family photo of my mom, my uncle, my two cousins, obviously like singing around the piano at Christmas. My family is very cool. So like super cool. They were probably playing the Beatles or something. And then there's like 4-year-old me with an ocarina right at the front leg.
Nice. So it was
in it.
We knew it was happening from early on.
Yeah. So I've always had a love of music. I've always had a love of dance and theater. I initially was planning on being, or I was for a short period, a professional dancer. I have always had this intense desire to use a couple of different avenues of my creativity. So I realized that if I was going to dance, I also needed to use my voice and express myself in that way. So of course I joined a rock school when I was 16, because that's of course what you do when you're also training to be a ballerina. It was amazing. My school was really, really cool. This tiny little school in the middle of the English countryside in
Nice.
Sussex called Greenfield School, and it had the most amazing faculty of teachers. They were all stupendous artists. Like my English teacher was a writer, my theater teacher was a director, my art teacher is one of the most glorious people I've ever met in my life. So I was nurtured from a young age, or more like I was allowed to be me from a young age, and that was really cool. And then that school just happened to have a rock school, so my teacher Richie Wicks was a bass player in a really great metal band called Angel Witch at the time. So
That's awesome.
his favorite
So,
singer was Dio, which was great.
oh, Dio, yeah, man, that dude.
Yeah.
So, it's funny when you're that acknowledgement that you got and validation that you got as a child.
Yeah.
It's such an important element to an artist's development. And I mean, there are artists that, they somehow break through, even though they had these horrendous upbringings.
Yeah.
But it's there's so many others. There's so many more that we have not heard of that were just really squashed, by certain people. Having that validation, do you think, did that continue through your music and through anything, or were there any stumbling blocks of any type?
Well, what was really interesting was that I had this beautiful group of people around me, and then I did all my final exams, and I didn't do that great in them, which was kind of devastating when you're someone like me who does everything up to 11. Note the Spinal Tap reference. So I'm so like I immerse myself in stuff, and then and it didn't go well, and it was kind of fascinating because there were certain areas which I just stopped doing them. One of my in England, the education system's a little bit different. So the things that you learn from 16 to 18, on your 18th year, you're kind of like, that's your first year of college, university over here. So I was doing 3 majors, and one of them was fine art that I loved with a passion, and I almost failed, and I just stopped doing it, and I almost didn't notice.
Wow.
And it wasn't, and also because I was paying so much attention to the theater arts and music at that time, I just was like, oh, it's all right. I mean, it was devastating, but I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And then it wasn't until years and years and years later, which I'm like, wow, I haven't touched it for years and years and years and years and years. It just was silently like, meh, meh.
Yeah.
And so it's not always those squashing can come in many different forms, and it's not always like the outrageous you're crap type things that actually do the most damage. Sometimes it can be very insidious. Sometimes it can be in the name of help, and you just don't even know. Yeah, so that was fascinating, and took me a long time into like my adult life to realize that it had happened.
Yeah. I'm fascinated with the schooling for artists. As a thing.
Yeah.
Because there are certain, and I think that there are some great teachers out there and professors that will really nurture a student and really help them. But then I have audited a few acting classes when I first started a long time ago, and sitting in the back, I remember just the students just being really feeling invalidated. The teacher was really condescending. And it was just one particular experience that I had. I'm not knocking the education as a whole, but sometimes it really does matter where you actually are being taught something that you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, is, you know, moving forward after that, and any other forms of education that you remember. You know, did it go back to that, or did you find your way, or find a better teacher, or solution?
Well, for the art, it just went away for a really long time, and then it wasn't until I noticed that had happened that I started picking it up again, and it kind of it luckily I had other avenues of creation. I graphic design, so I and it was actually through that process that I suddenly was like, holy shit, I haven't picked up a fucking pen since I was 18. What the actual fuck? You know what I mean? Like, it really bad. Sorry.
Right.
That was the realization though. Like,
Sure.
whoa, okay. What I've noticed, I had some what I noticed because once I'd finished school when I was 18, I actually, after a year spent in Europe, I moved to New York City straight away. And what I have noticed is that there have been a couple of times when I haven't been doing so well, and the spidey sense that I've come to realize is when I start feeling very self-conscious, and when I start having way more attention on my own body and my own personal space than the people around me. There's someone around that is there's something going on with them, and it's really funny. It's happened a couple of times. Like, gotten to the point where, like, I've been so self-conscious, I've had accidents, like I've hurt myself because I'm like,
yeah.
And it's actually, when I go back and look, and I'm like, wow, that person is actually not got my best interests at heart.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting thing. I think the more I learned to and was trained to trust my own instincts and trust because I think we all have it, actually, those moments where you're like, okay, there is such a disturbance in the force right now, like, what's going on? And as long as you know that it's not yourself just self-sabotaging, because that can happen as well, it's really good to be able to trust yourself. So that's been a long journey, because especially moving here when I was so young was really daunting at first, for sure.
And New York is a pretty different area than the countryside.
Forest. You know what I loved about it though? You know, it was so good. Everyone just said what they felt. That was so great.
Refreshing.
Yeah, so refreshing. Like, at first I was shocked, and then I was like, whoa. Like, because I remember being very, very lost in the middle of New York City and, like, really not knowing where the hell I was going. So then I'd be like, excuse me, can I? And the person's like, where you want to go? I'm like, never mind. And they're like, no, tell me where you want to go. I want to help you right now. And suddenly, like, the realization where they actually
do, yeah.
Oh, they actually want to help me right now, and they'll follow through with it is kind of wonderful.
Right. They want to help you, but they also got to go somewhere. That's so it's like, let's get the ball rolling. Where do you got to go? And
move it along.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely.
So Kathy is saying, was that a unicorn mug that you had there? There it is. You were right, Kathy. And Matt is saying, hello. Thank you, Harold, for tuning in. Appreciate it.
The unicorn mug is in honor of Kingston and Greystar, my cohort, because we are unicorns personified in rock and roll. And our mic stands have unicorn head, black ones, of course, unicorn heads covered in glitter.
Nice.
Like unicorn corns. Is it a corn? We just call them corns. I don't think that's what it's called.
Is it? I'm not sure.
Kathy Savas, you need to just quickly find out what the official and correct name of the horn of a unicorn is. Thank you. Okay, sure.
I thought it was just Una.
Una. I
thought the corn was just the the name of the animal. Um,
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about this group. Was that something? Well, okay, let's back up a little bit. So you
Okay.
got to New York,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you start music right away, dance. Was it like New York? New York, you're here.
Yeah. I kind of just yeah, that was interesting. It was a little bit of an interesting time in my life. Unicorn horns. Thank you, Kathy Savis. Okay. So I can't shorten it. I do have to say unicorn
You
horns.
have to say the whole thing.
Horns.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I might just have to write to the dictionary and let them know that there should be a called corn. Just I should. Anyway, yeah. So starting in New York City was I'd had quite an intense loss in my life just beforehand. My mum had passed away.
Mhm.
And so actually, when I got to New York, it did two things. It was a healer because you just had to be there and be present. But I also, it took me a minute to get my bearings. And I also was at that point in time where I was making a decision to kind of swerve more in the direction of music.
Oh,
Yeah, it was quite a soul searching moment to have in life. Yeah, so that all happened in when I was, gosh, I think I just turned 20. I might have still been 19 when I moved here
mhm.
with my,
Do you,
yeah.
yeah. Do you remember that moment like as being something really big, or was it just something you just gradually went towards music?
It was one of those moments where I really needed to listen deeply to myself, and I had to, because growing up and training in the arts, and this happens often to many, especially if you're a performing artist, you train in all of the different areas quite equally.
Hmm.
Although dance definitely takes up more time because it's so physically demanding, but you're training. And so I remember kind of looking at everything and saying, okay, what really makes me feel like I can honestly and fully communicate in the way that I want to? And it seemed like I needed to use my voice.
Hmm.
During my time in New York, I've done theater as well, which I love dearly, so much. But I also really love music with a passion, and creating emotion and communication and feeling and imbuing that feeling to other people through this thing.
I love it. Well, you definitely have done that thing to this thing because
There
I've
you
been
go.
inspired for sure. So the performing artist. I mean, it's something that you don't like. I remember in the '40s, and I mean, I don't remember in the '40s because I wasn't there, but I remember reading and seeing things from the '40s where these actors would go into the system at MGM, Paramount, whatever. They would get these contracts,
Yeah.
and they would have to go to dance and acting and singing, and there was a whole thing. Even if you had a speech thing, they would send you to a whatever a linguistic
Uh-huh.
coach or something.
Linguistic coach, yeah.
Yeah, and it was part of that system, and it seems like that makes sense, to put somebody into all these, because now, not so much now. I think it's almost going back a little bit to that, but before that, I think that people were sort of saying that you have to pick one thing,
Yeah, I don't
pick
agree
one
with
thing,
that. Don't agree.
and that's always been like I've been stuck on that for a while. I mean,
Yeah.
not for the last couple of years, but before that, it was just sort of like, well, maybe I should do this, and maybe I should do that. And you end up doubting everything else. So I think that that's a wonderful thing. Talk a little bit about that, maybe about how you would approach someone who's out there who's maybe having a little going through that. Like I like singing, but I also like acting. But also, I'm thinking of writing. I also want to direct. I also, what's one of the things that they should be looking for?
So I think firstly it's There is a difference between someone who this is what I've observed anyway. There is a difference between someone who truly can't decide because they're worried that it's backed by fear or maybe that they don't quite want to be committed. So that can happen. There's also people that just truly like and want to express themselves in many different ways. So if you're coming from a place of worry or upset or doubt or it's that you just haven't sat down or someone hasn't said, hey, do what's in your heart. If you haven't had that like heart conversation where you've sat down and said, okay, really, what makes my heart do this? And in what way can I spread that feeling to as many people as possible? If you haven't had that conversation, I would say have that conversation and sit down with yourself and do that. If you have, and you're like, I want to do these things, and just fucking great, do it. It's amazing. And you're right. There was a time period where the whole thing was like, pick one. You can always only do one. That's why Juliette Lewis is one of my idols and icons of all time, because she's this phenomenal actress. And then she's like, I want to be a rock singer now. Right. Do you know how much pushback she got? Everyone was like, oh, sorry, you can't do. Oh, that's sweet.
And she did it.
And she did it from scratch on her own, like like gritty sweat and balls and tears and and it's, oh my God, I love her so much. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So you can do it. You totally can do it. And there's millions. And as you said, we all very often, if you're a performer, you're trained in all of those things, and a lot of the time you have to use those things in combination. So why not do more than one thing if you want to, especially now when things are so very different. You're allowed, everyone. You can do it.
Right.
Do it.
You know, it would be great if they can bring back a program like this, you know, something that not necessarily a public program, but or a private, what am I trying to say? Something for the schools, you know, something for like schools where they would actually take into account all the different types of arts. And, you know, they've been pulling art classes and art programs and money and everything from the schools for the last
8 billion
years and stuff. But it just makes so much more sense to do that, you know?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the band. I want to hear about the band. Tell me about your partner. Tell me about, you know, what was the inspiration for the music that you guys put together? And Kathy has some questions here, which I'm going to ask soon.
I met my musical cohort. We both were backing singers for the legendary glam rock guitar player Punky Meadows, who was in a band in the late 70s called Angel. And at the time it was like Angel and Kiss, and Angel wore all white and Kiss wore all black. And Punky, actually, do you know the Frank Zappa song, Punky's Whips?
Not really.
There is a Frank Zappa song called Punky's Whips, and it's about Punky Meadows because he has the most pout you've ever seen in your life. So so we were both backup singers for Punky, and our mutual friend Chandler Mogul was the lead singer in Punky's band at the time. And we went on the road together and we did a whole bunch of shows together. And during that time period, we stuck together because also women in rock music are rarer than men in rock music, let's just say. So we're like, great, let's stick together. This is really cool. Let's do this. And we realized on the road that we kind of had this cool energy together. She had an existing band. She said, do you want to join my band? I said yes. And it morphed into our kind of alter egos, Kingston and Greystar, and we were named in a really funny. We were named in Old Vegas in a backstage room, like filled with like zebra wallpaper. It was kind of cool. And the drummer for Punky at the time, Bob Pantella, who drums for Monster Magnet, was like, "You girls need stage names. You have to have stage names." And he looked at Grey Star, and her earthly name is Barbara Serbies, and he's like, "Well, you always wear gray, and you never perform without a star on your cheek. So I hereby name you Grey Star." And the heavens opened and the kids rained down. And then he looked at me, he's like, "Well, what do you want to be called?" And I'm like, "Well, my middle name is Kingston, and I think it's the coolest name in the whole freaking world." And he's like, "You shall now be called Kingston." And Kingston and Greystar appeared.
Sounds so perfect too.
It's really weird. It's weird happening. Yeah, we love the same this genre of music, which is a definite throwback to the 80s and new wave with a big whipping of glam in there is really fun to perform. And I've always loved being in the audience with that type of music. And it's a little weird, which I just love it. It's just weird. And it means that I can make synth sounds that sound like Blade Runner soundtrack and stuff. So anything where I can like add the sci-fi in there, I'm like, yeah.
Nice. I do want to talk about stage presence and stage, and I also want to talk about the space and fantasy.
Final Frontier, John. Do you want to talk about the Final Frontier?
Star Trek, yes. Do that. We do have a question here from Kathy. Who are your favorite vocalists? What type of music do you like to sing?
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay. Favorite vocalists? Bloody hell. Okay. Robert Plant, who made me sob and heave when I first saw him live. I thought I was going to have a conniption because I was so emotional. It was just like,
yeah.
my second, wow. I love Dale Bozier from The Missing Persons. I love and Alanis Morissette. And I know that doesn't totally mix with the music I'm doing at the moment, but oh, wait, I have it. Friggin' Dolores O'Riordan from the Cranberries. Because her yodel sets my spirit on fire.
Yeah.
I love passionate singers. Like,
yeah,
got that passion in there. It doesn't actually matter for me what genre you're from. It something happens and it's glorious.
Yeah, and if you had to sing, like, because I've heard you sing all styles, really. I've heard you sing like jazzy stuff. I've seen you pop stuff, classic Beatles things. I've seen you sing. So Christmas songs, you know, at parties, and I mean, you haven't lived until you heard your Silver Bells. So, you know, what would you say? Would it be really the rock, or if you had to just be picking one genre? You don't have to. I mean, obviously, pick
I think that's a crappy question.
It is a crappy question.
I think it really depends what part of me or what I have more than one part that
right. I get it.
Makes me explode with fire.
Right.
So singing rock music and especially new wave punk tinted rock music where everything's staccato and it's as much about creating rhythm as it is creating audio vocals. It just is amazing. And then on the other side, for me, there's nothing like a good folk song. So I've definitely got like the Fairy in the Woods side, and then
you're a performing artist.
I'm a performing artist.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. Sometimes I want to play the blues. Sometimes I want to play some little jazzy something. I want to play more rock, heavier stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't think I can really just pick that one thing because that's not where I was emotionally when I decided to play whatever it was I decided to play.
Yeah, totally.
So, Mary says, she is so cool. And you are right, Mary. Thank you for tuning in.
Mary.
So let's talk about the stage, because stage is one of those things that you can't really prepare for stage. You can practice in your room guitar all you want, right? You can practice your singing. You can even practice your choreography, but it ain't gonna.
Good, John.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've been working on that.
Good.
But there is just no way that is going to prepare you for actually stepping out on that stage. Those lights in your face.
Yeah.
You can barely see the audience, but you know they're there because you hear them.
Mm-hmm.
And the excitement that you feel, and it's not even a nervous feeling anymore. It's you want to get out there, you want to play. You're so excited about this. You know what I mean? But it's like. But that first time when you get out there, the fear is just it's so insane,
It's insane. Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge hi
Glow.
Hey, Glow. How are you? So how did you deal with that? Like, it seems like you had started early when you're 4 years old in front of the picture there with your
Macarena. Yeah.
Yeah, so you were already kind of on the stage. But did you ever have any issues with that?
Yes and no. Like I've been performing since I was 3. So I think it's something that you have to, it's kind of like learning how to swim, that there's that innate knowledge about how to be in front of an audience or what to give in front of an audience. But you do have to work through, like I remember and it was I'm trying to think of when it would set in. There were always certain scenarios where I was totally cool with a gigantic audience. Totally cool. No worries. Bigger the better, all good. When I started performing in front of much smaller, intimate audiences, actually when I came here, when I started, performing, I remember I was in my first band in New York City, and our first gig was in one of those gorgeous little cafe bars in the East Village.
Mm-hmm.
And like, bloody hell, like they were just sitting right where my hand is right there. And I was like, oh, this is different. And I wasn't worried or scared as me, but my body had a really weird reaction. And I remember that I got like the shakes to the point where it was affecting my voice. And I had to, like, when I wasn't singing, luckily I was not the lead singer at the time, like I had to slightly like clench my jaw to stop myself shaking and breathe through it. And it was so weird because I, as Amy, wanted to be there with
Sure.
I was so happy to be there, but my body was doing some weird shit that I then had to like and I had to get used to it, and it's you have to learn how to be there comfortably and be cool with that. Yes. It was really funny. I'm just like so wild.
So it says, I love you, Miss Amy.
I love you, Miss Phyllis.
So it's funny. The first time I went on stage, we were all so nervous. For some reason, we all started chewing gum.
That'll stop your jaw chattering.
We were just looking down.
Oh my God.
We were all chewing gum. And I remember after the show, somebody was like, yeah, you guys sounded great, but why were you all chewing gum?
It was a band decision,
We were like, because we were so nervous. We just figured, it wasn't even a conscious decision. We were just so nervous.
I loved coming to your gigs back in the day when I was a wee young
Yeah. I don't know how you got into those clubs.
That's not something that I will tell you right now.
So the excitement of performing, when you're performing live in front of an audience, after you get past that part of it, then it really becomes on what you're actually giving to this audience, right?
That's
It's
right.
What am I going to leave them with? And I want them to leave here going, man, that was so good. When you go on stage, do you say something to yourself? Do you think something to yourself to get you in that mind frame where you know that the audience is there to see you, and that you have to make sure you provide them some value that they, and I'm sure you will, but just something to tell yourself.
I always feel that my main job in life as a performer is to envelop. This sounds really weird, but I think you've probably figured out I'm weird by now. Is to
I didn't figure it out. I already knew that, but
right.
maybe the audience me.
Now they know. We just let them into the secret. Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm weird. No, I feel that my job is part of it is to envelop the audience into the universe that I am in at that moment. So, for example, if you're, I'm just going to take theater for a minute. I've done a lot of interactive theater where a large part of the work is getting the audience truly involved in what you're doing. And sometimes it's actually by conversation. Sometimes it's just by participation in movement or all sorts of things. The entire performance is this interactive journey. And the whole point is to open the gates and let the whole audience into the universe that you're living in. And when that happens, and when the agreement and when everyone is in the same space with you, something really astonishing happens. And I think that transporting people to different places through art is, again, it's all about imagination, right? And creating new or different places, or places that haven't been for thousands of years, or places that haven't been yet. And I think that that's a really big deal. So for me, like there's always like this conscious moment where I'm like, okay, ready? All right, we're going to let them in now. And it's the same with like singing rock and roll. The whole point is to get everyone engaged, and you want their heart to be beating the same way that your heart's beating. You want them to feel the drums in the pit of your stomach. You want them to move and jump and mosh and friggin' go wild in unison. And there's something kind of amazing about that. That's what I really miss right now, is not having that physical ability to do that. Yeah.
It really is magic, when you, especially if you have that viewpoint as you're approaching the stage,
right?
Because you're already going in with that idea, and people will respond to that. People respond to that, to that energy, and you said something interesting that was, earlier about the responsibility of an artist, talk a little bit about that, especially now during this situation that we're all in here. One of the things that I have spoken about here was that everyone's at home watching Netflix, everybody's home watching Hulu or whatever they're watching, Amazon Prime, and they're all consuming artists. They're all consuming artists. So the whole non-essential thing was just a complete joke, but I get it.
Yeah,
it was a complete BS. But the responsibility of the artist now, I think, in my opinion, is a million times more important than it was just 4 months ago.
I think so.
So talk to me about that. Talk to me about the responsibility of an artist and how, and what's something that they, why should an artist be responsible?
Well, I think that for me, I never feel better than when I'm giving with art, because that reciprocity is something really magical that happens. I think that when, especially in a time when people are having to be isolated, with an artist, reminding people that they can dream and imagine, because I really do believe that thought, that imagination is the beginning of anything, right?
Right.
So reminding people that they can do that, for one, is very powerful, and it's very powerful because it's also very intangible. It's not like, it's not like, oh mate, here's a chocolate bar, oh that tastes really good, oh now I feel better. It's like, here's an idea, and then that idea goes in the other person's space, and then that idea starts doing something, and it can either be a good idea or a not so good idea. Not to say that all art should be happy, because I really don't agree with that. I think that art, it should be a mirror of life, and part of living is the feeling, the emotions, and overcoming things, and sometimes losing, and all of that stuff is great. But I think it's the responsibility of the artist, that it's almost like that we're like carrying the culture on our backs a little bit. And the more that we remember that we're in control of what we are creating and what we can do, and that it's not freaking up to anybody else, and we're the ones with the ideas, that's really powerful. Yeah.
And I love that what you said about the different styles of music, and that idea that people say, if it's la 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 la, it's fine, but if it's like, and I have always, and when I was younger, I used to kind of have a little bit of a difficulty with that, because just raised very, very Catholic, and but I wanted to hear real music, music that really was not like Led Zeppelin, for instance. That's what I was like. I was listening to this, and I'm playing this in my house. My grandmother was like, "What is that?" Da-dun, da-dun, dun, da-dun, 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 you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She would just not understand it, but it did something to me. It just made me feel something. It communicated to me, and I think that's where it comes. We were talking about earlier about how we want to sing different kind of things, because that's where there's pieces of us in all this in art, so we can really communicate that. That's awesome, Amy. Star Trek.
Okay, which one's your favorite? Which one's your favorite series?
We might have to actually just do a full episode on Star Trek.
Please, can we though? Please, can we?
I'm serious about that.
I'm so excited right now.
Here's what happened. I've always thought that you were a Star Wars, and you are a big Star Wars fan. And I was never a huge Star Wars fan. There you go.
I am. Just so everyone is understanding, this is true. Okay, continue.
100%. You just nailed that. That was freaking awesome. So yes. So and I wasn't sure about the Star Trek thing. And then when we found out that you and I are both Star Trek fanatics, it like changed. It elevated our already amazing friendship to like some level we can't even comprehend.
It's true.
And so what is it about the fantasy that really satisfies that part of you?
Star Trek in particular? Star Trek.
Well, you could talk about, Star Trek, I would love to just talk about Star Trek, but I know that you're also interested in a lot of other sci-fi stuff as well.
I am a nerd. I'm very, very proud of it. The thing with Star Trek that I think is kind of glorious is the creators really were not afraid to create this moment of what if some of the very basic things that as a civilization have held us up for so many years had been fixed already. And then what if that the main thing in life was that glorious exploration of otherness that's out there. And I think just, oh man, it's just so good. And the other thing that I know you and I have talked about is on Star Trek, like, it's not, I think there always needs to be the good versus evil story. And I think Star Wars fulfills that beautifully. That it's beautiful. Star Trek, you can freaking live in it forever because there are anti-heroes and there are these discussions and moments of ethics and morality and like the characters are complex and or more complex and oh man, all of those and just the makeup. I can't.
Makeup.
I want a forehead, man. I want one of those foreheads. I really do.
I think you said it great. I mean, it's exactly that. And I always thought that Star Trek for me was the characters developed so well in the series. You know, the Next Generation, and I love them all. I mean, I think my favorite would probably Deep Space Nine. Would probably be my favorite.
Watching that right now.
Are you really?
Yes, I am. I watch it like I don't
I
think I just sit on my bum all day watching Star Trek. You know how some people like listen to the radio in the morning when they're getting ready? Right. I just have Star Trek on my little phone.
I've done that. Look how disturbed I am. I was vacuuming and the vacuum got stuck and I had to open up the vacuum and I pulled out, you know, you got my daughter, my wife, they had long hair, all this hair. And this chunk of hair came out and I started thinking of a tribble. And so
you're like, crap, I hoovered a tribble.
Yeah, so that night I pull out this hair. That night I go onto my computer. I'm like, let me watch that episode because it just reminded me of that. But yeah, so anyway, Star Trek is definitely and just I'm not huge into like that much sci-fi other than Star Trek, you know. And Star Wars, I've had friends, Holland Calgar, our mutual friend, who used to yell at me because he's a huge Star Wars fan. Used to yell at me. He was like, "You're gonna sit down here and you're gonna watch this." And when we had the place up there and we were living La Vida Loca back then, and I was like, "All right, I'll just watch." But I for some reason there was something about it that I did not understand, and I have to go back again. I don't know.
Do it again. Please ignore the ones that happened in the 90s because then they weren't real and have nothing to do with Star Wars. As far as I'm concerned, you should start
with the three, right? The three that
the real three ones.
Yeah.
The actual ones with Harrison Ford. The actual real ones.
Right.
I watched those. So my mum was a huge sci-fi. My uncle was a famous science fiction and fantasy artist who actually painted the original film poster for the UK for Return of the Jedi. So
what?
Yes. So that's the other half of my life. I actually run and manage his estate.
Wow.
So I've had sci-fi in my blood since the word go, and my whole family is. So like my cousin sat me down when I was probably about 6 to watch Star Wars. And then from that point forward, every time I went to my cousin's house, my cousin had to make my hair into the layer buns. I had to borrow my auntie's special lip gloss because it was bright red and shiny like Princess Leia's. Was a whole thing.
Wow.
I also upset one of my best friends very intensely. We have it on camcorder of my little friend Bethy.
Nice.
Looked like an angel, is crying her eyes out, and her dad is like, "Bethy, what's wrong?" And Bethy's like, "Amy, it's Amy." And Steven's like, what happened with Amy? She made me play Star Wars all lunchtime. And Steven's like, "Well, what did you do?" And she's like, "We just had to walk around the playground because she was Luke Skywalker with the lightsaber." I know. Because I had to have a lightsaber, so I needed to be Luke Skywalker. That was just the end of that.
That was that.
Apparently, I scarred her for life. Yeah.
Next generation.
Next generation. I'm next generation. Yeah, I had a big crush on Data. He was my
Data, really?
Android for life, man. I love that one.
Have you put those on?
Yeah. Yes, Mary. That's because you're cool. Telling you. Right. Mm-hmm. And Jadzia Dax, and so beautiful. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God, she was like incredible. Woo! Wow,
badass character as well.
What an interesting idea and concept of a character of just that whole thing. It just it's so wild. I always thought Kirk really set the tone for a lot of. I mean, it was really Gene Roddenberry, and we're gonna wrap on Star Trek in a second, but just give me a minute. But Gene Roddenberry really kind of set the world. He kind of created the world.
Yeah.
But I think that Kirk like really found the balance between a guy who's tormented,
Mm-hmm.
who was not always the best, kind of sneaky,
Yeah.
but very brave and always did the right thing at the end of the day, and from when you move into all the different captains, they brought a little bit of that, from and it just makes sense that the Federation,
Yeah.
because it's real, the Federation really instilled that into training their captains.
I agree. I also really, in terms of groundbreaking moments, Star Trek kind of had all of those moments. The first
It is.
inspirational kiss on
3 or 4.
television.
Mhm.
You've got like just these characters that broke all the rules, and that's great.
Yeah, it just had a lot of interesting things. Even yeah. Okay, we can go on. We probably will at some point. So Amy, tell me a few other things that I know we talked a little bit about it. Some of the other projects that you're working on. And enlighten us with your other ventures.
So on the subject of science fiction, yeah. So my other great love in life is the art of my uncle, Josh Kirby. So I was I don't know how you call it, but he passed away in 2001, and I, from that point forward, ran his estate. And it's quite amazing. He was a forerunner in science fiction and fantasy illustration. So he illustrated for Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, all of the amazing film posters he did. There was a more recent author called Terry Pratchett, Sir Terry Pratchett, who wrote all the Discworld novels, got more worldwide bestsellers. And in every single country except America, get it together, guys, America, my uncle illustrated the first 25 of his novels and helped him become a household name because his illustrations are so vivid and vibrant and glorious. And so I've been, one of my life goals and things I do is maintain his legacy. Myself and my man in the other room, Rob Liano, my man, run joshkirbyart.com. So one of the things obviously is preserving and forwarding his legacy, and also because he played such an important part in the history and timeline of art. As an artist in his own right, that's extremely important to me. Art education, the arts is vital to me as well, and it was very important to him. He started off as a illustrator in science fiction when science fiction wasn't really considered its own genre. Like so we're talking the early 50s. His first cover he painted was Ian Fleming's Moonraker, one of the James Bond, as a book. And I found recently, so through my 20s, I would go to England for periods of time and archive all of his entire estate and all of his correspondence and all of his notes. And I found this letter some correspondence between him and Ray Bradbury, talking about, so Josh did the cover for Illustrated Man, which was one of Ray's most famous books, and a couple of others. And they'd been going backwards and forwards. And I found this letter from Ray to Josh talking about the vital importance of artists and specifically the genre of science fiction in the world of the arts because of its ability to imagine futures.
Yes.
And they're talking and yearning for the time. They're saying, we really hope we get to the point where it's considered a genre in its own right. And I feel like we have done that at this point.
Absolutely. And
hopefully. But I found this typed piece of paper, which is
That
so.
is amazing. That's like such a piece of history there.
Oh my God. So yeah, so Rob and I, oh gosh, I found it. I'm going to read you 2 seconds. Hold on.
Cool.
Wow. But art seems late always, coming into the meadows where the ideas of an age play. The artist has to stand around, head in the clouds, waiting for those beneath to grow to his size. It is difficult for the artist to educate the Lilliputians. Oh, wow. And of course, all too often, most artists, like most writers, are Lilliputians themselves. Anyway, I approve of your ideas of moving the space age into the galleries. Isn't that cool? It's just
That's an amazing, such a well-written letter too. I mean,
so cool.
today people get a text like, "Where you at?"
I know, like, what's up?
Yeah.
He's talking about science and the space age. These are central ideas of our time, and not to cross-pollinate the sciences, which is giving us new insights into religion, philosophy, seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, knowing on every level is to miss the boat completely.
Wow.
Woo!
Wow.
So yeah. So on the other side, on the business side, Rob and I have a really great website, and we sell beautiful limited edition prints, fine art prints, beautiful any item that can present his work in a really beautiful way. We're doing whether you like them or not. We did a line of masks through the quarantine, and it actually got us through a really dry spell. And it's so cool because like literally
art.
Josh's wild, glorious art is over the mask, and it's kind of amazing and cool. So
yeah, well, if we have to wear them, why not make them beautiful?
I'm telling you, it's important.
That is so cool. That is amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to make sure that website is in the description below on the YouTube channel and in Facebook and everywhere else.
Nice.
You guys can check that out for sure. Somebody's asking here, have you seen the Picard series?
I have.
Star Trek.
Of course, because it's life, basically. I have seen the Picard series. I love Jean-Luc so much. I feel like it was I liked it. I know a bunch of people didn't like it. I liked it. I think they handled the subject matter beautifully. I think the whole thing between him and Data, my original crush, was glorious. I dug it a lot. I dug how slow it was. I think it was ballsy to make something be a cerebral or not cerebral, like more of a feeling piece. And I think they did a beautiful job.
Yeah, and he's such a fantastic actor. I mean, he's just so freaking out of this world. That
talk about performing artists though, because many, I mean, I know most of my favorite film actors are theater actors turned film, and it's that whole concept of being rounded in education. He can dance, he can sword fight.
Yeah, I love that.
Beautiful.
Amy, it's been an hour and 3 minutes, if you can believe that we've been, and I could probably go on another 10 hours. And I would love to have you back, and maybe we can do some more Star Trek. And I want to hear more, where your band is and some of the music and when the songs come out and everything. So we'll definitely set something up together. Do you have any final words for your audience?
Live long and prosper, people. Be good. Do good. Be cool. Love you.
I love you, Amy. Thank you so much for everything. And we will definitely have you back very soon. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Bye.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Amy. She is so cool. Just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll definitely have her back because I have a feeling that we just scratched the surface on just so many other subjects that we could have dove into, either way, get into. So we will definitely do that next time. So thank you everybody for watching. If you like these interviews, please subscribe to my channel, hit the little bell so you get a little reminder, and also share this with somebody who you think it might help. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow night for Music Makers at 9:30 p.m. And as always, peace.